January 5th was the date that I actually started making this. Just ignore that. So we're going to be talking about the total lunar eclipse in Leo happening January 20th and 21st. That'll be Sunday. About a lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipse occurs when the moon passes directly behind the Earth and into its shadow. This can occur only when the sun, moon, and Earth are exactly or very closely aligned, with Earth between the other two. A lunar eclipse can occur only on the night of a full moon. Lunar eclipses occur when the Earth's shadow blocks the sun's light, which otherwise reflects off the moon. There are three types: total, partial, and penumbral, with the most dramatic being obviously the total lunar eclipse, which this one will be a total, in which the Earth's shadow is completely covered by the moon. The next lunar eclipse will be the total lunar eclipse, as I said, the 20th and 21st, 2019, and it'll be visible from North America, South America, and parts of Europe and Africa. There's the map there with the locality of this. Eclipses in astrology. In medieval and ancient cultures, eclipses, especially total lunar eclipses, were perceived as omens and equating to cursing the lands which could see them. The malefic associations that are applied to medieval astrology and traditional astrological techniques for deciphering events. So with eclipses, I examine potential trauma signatures, conflicts, malefic signatures when predicting events. So let's examine the lunar eclipse chart. We're going to focus on the astro-sociological implications this time around. So here's the chart, just to give you a breakdown of the whole wheel for people who are learning. The now houses are ruled by mutable, so this has a lot to do with the mental frequencies of people. There's nothing in the first house of Virgo, second house of Libra, we have Pallas. Third house, we have Ceres in Scorpio, and then we have Venus and Jupiter in Sagittarius with the IC. Fourth house, we have, the IC, by the way, is right here because I'm using equal houses. Fourth house has the conjunction with Saturn and Pluto. Fifth house has Vulcan, Mercury, and the South Node in Capricorn. The nodes are retrograde, by the way. Then we have the Sun, as well as Black Moon Lilith in Aquarius. Into the sixth house, we have Vesta in Aquarius. The polar ascendant in Neptune in Pisces. Then we go to the seventh house, we have Chiron in Pisces. We have Hygeia that recently went into Aries. And then we have Mars in Aries. The eighth house, we have Eris and Uranus still conjunct in Aries. The ninth house, we have Juno in Taurus. The MC is going to be mutable, like I said. All the mutable crux will be the rulers for the now houses. Then we have Hades in Cancer, retrograde in the 10th house. And then we have the actual eclipse happening that's conjunct with the North Node in Cancer. So you see that this is the Earth symbol here. This is where it was emphasizing that an eclipse can only happen when the Sun, which is right down here at 0 degrees Aquarius, the direct polar opposite of that would be the sign of Leo. When the Sun is at 0 degrees of Leo, conjunct with the Earth symbol. That's the phenomenon that you see in a chart that creates the total lunar eclipse. Then we go to the 12th house, which has trans-Pluto in Virgo retrograde. So as I've seen other astrologers mention, or people on Facebook, all the planets were direct at the last eclipse and will be direct at this eclipse. That's not true. No, they're retrograde, as well as some other points that I don't even have here on the map. So the major lunar eclipse aspects, there's a quincunx between Mercury and the eclipse, a semi-square to Neptune, a square to Uranus, and trines to Mars and Venus. So the trine to Mars and Venus will associate people being proactive and physically being involved with things. This eclipse will trigger people to act out in some way. That could potentially go, good or bad, depending on the aspects in some individual's chart. So when we look at the major aspect points right here, I highlighted them in the chart just to give you a good visual, because these are the major ones that I pulled up from my Solar Fire Eclipse software. So here you see the eclipse itself at the top of this grand trine, and Jupiter should have been involved in that square too, or that circle right there. It's a square, but you know what I mean. It should have been included there because they're only 1 degree away. So we have a grand trine with this eclipse to the third house, which is a mental house. And then also we have it to others And so this is very sociological influences here, because the 11th house is of sociological institutions, the internet, anything beyond the self. Obviously, the 5th house is self, opposites friends and social groups. And the 3rd house is a communication house, and the 7th house is of others. So this will be a lot of people squabbling and getting into discussions, altercations, arguments with each other. And if you also see here, Mercury and Neptune are two of the facets of the mind. So we're going to go into why this particular eclipse is so important or significant to astrosociological and astropsychological influences. So quick astropsychology introduction. Lunar eclipses have major impacts on emotional and mental facets with an individual, which can have major implications on a sociological level. My original theories on the anatomy of the brain using astrology reinforce this emphasis on emotional and mental health with transits affecting the mental houses in astrology. Next slide, I'll show you the basic anatomy of the brain and the astrological correspondence. This is my original theory, and this is my original notes that I've made, so you won't find this anywhere else, unless somebody's copied me. Anyway, so the astrological correspondence and the anatomy of the human brain. You see here we have the left and the right lobes. The left is ruled by Mercury, primarily, and Jupiter. In ancient astrology, too, remember, Jupiter was actually the ruler of Pisces as well as Sagittarius. So if you wanted to have the whole argument that there's no solid theory on there being like a left dominant or a right dominant brain, a lot of these do interchange, but this is just a generalization for the visual. So Mercury on the left side is associated with analytics, reasoning, language, mathematics, science, and that kind of bleeds into the bottom here with the Jupiter. Beliefs, higher learning, education, philosophy. So this is like more of the conclusive knowledge that is acquired from absorbing information through your mercurial facets. Then we look to the right brain. This has emotions, intuition, instincts, behaviors, where creativity and the creative side of the spectrum comes from, the right side, which Neptune is also overlaps with the moon in that case, but imagination, creativity, and subconscious are the facets of Neptune. The entire cohesive unit of the brain here is ruled by Pluto, which is the psyche overall. So the collaboration of all of these 4 points in the brain can be represented by Pluto, the psyche. So the lunar eclipse, which is the moon, I kind of just broke my diagram down to show you, will be affecting the overall psyche and aspecting all the other planets representing the mind. So it's in direct, I have it right there. So it's going to be in direct aspect with this, with Jupiter, with Mercury, and with Neptune, as you can see right here. So here again is the eclipse. It's got a direct opposition with Pluto here. And then we've also got that quincunx right there to Neptune. And then we've also still got the opposition T-square with Mercury right down here. And then we have that trine to Jupiter. So you see that right there. So the 12th house here is ruled by Neptune, or if you want to use ancient astrology associations and remove Neptune, you could say Jupiter and Jupiter both rule the 9th and 12th house. Just like you see here with Mercury, it rules the 3rd and 6th. So there used to be duality with ancient astrology. So you can use just the ancient rulers. Don't use any other planets besides the 7, which is the Sun, Moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Or you can add the newer associations. So Jupiter rules the 9th, if we're using the modern associations, which is what I kind of referenced for this. And again, Mercury controls the 3rd and the 6th house. These are the 4 houses that are primarily the focus when you're looking at astrosociological signatures. Not only the houses themselves, but their rulers as well. So obviously, again, Neptune, Jupiter, Mercury. Those are all the associations with those. You can also flip it to looking where Virgo is, looking where Pisces is, looking where Gemini is, and looking where Sagittarius is as well. Aspect highlights. There's a grand trine with the point starting at the eclipse. I already talked about that. Aspecting Venus-Jupiter conjunction and Hygeia and Chiron conjunction in the 7th house. The grand cross or grand square starting at the eclipse to Uranus, Mercury, Stellium, and Pallas. With a grand square, I'd like to highlight the T-square with the eclipse, Uranus-Mercury having major implications on the overall mental health of collective society. Keeping those major aspects in mind, let's examine the rulers and depositors for the mental house correspondence. The third house, ruled by Gemini and Mercury, represents how one absorbs and accepts information they receive. With Ceres and Scorpio, people will be drawn to more dark, negative information, or, the shock kind of news, more or less, which has been something that's been conditioned in our our news and media for quite some time, since the infamous Saturn-Neptune square, with us actually having Jupiter squaring Neptune now. We're reliving similar signatures to that, having some similar issues with that as well. So the Ceres and Scorpio will be, people will be drawn to more negative, dark information that fits their biased ideations and beliefs. Also with Jupiter in the third house, square to Neptune, this creates a delusional set of beliefs, or the overall perception is lacking a realistic perspective. I already got to emphasize on that. Special consideration, although the fourth house is not included with the mental crux is those four houses I talked about. Astrologically, the depositor for the psyche, aka Pluto, is present in the fourth house, conjunct with Saturn, which translates to a strong dose of reality, causing a lot of inner turmoil with those significantly affected by the delusional transit themes. Pluto conjunct the house cusp also includes it within the grand square to the eclipse, reinforcing the overall associations with the entire mental process ruled by Pluto. The aftermath of the influences from Jupiter, Mercury, Moon, and Neptune. Again, the different hemispheres of the brain, as I was talking about. So examining the sixth house, which is ruled by Virgo and Mercury, currently has Vesta in Aquarius and Neptune in Pisces. House ruler in Aquarius would represent unconventional methods with traditional sixth house associations. With Vesta in Aquarius, it creates an atmosphere of freedom, and you have a tendency to be escaping from routine. The escapism is re-emphasized, yet again with Neptune sharing this house. The sixth house represents analytic abilities, discernment, organization, obligation to mundane contributions. Virgo, kind of themes. With Neptune in the sixth house, there may be difficulty with coping with everyday life. The upside to this heavy Neptunian imaginary state is people are able to break through creative blocks and express their philosophical truths, exploring the world together through travel, study, foreign interests, or philosophy. This aspect is brought to us by Juno and Taurus in the ninth house of higher learning and philosophy. The other potentials with this eclipse energy is that many who are stuck in a perpetuation of rigid thinking will have the opportunity to break any narrow-minded habits during this time. That is also emphasized on trans-Pluto being present in the 12th house, which is ruled by Neptune in Pisces, so the overall subconscious and perception of collective society is on the verge of a mental transformation. Whether you embrace this as an opportunity to allow it to consume you like a major mental crisis usually can, that's up to you. For those interested in a personalized reading, chart reports, or astrological counseling to determine how important aspects such as this lunar eclipse will affect you, you can contact me for a reading.
Hello, is there someone there who cares for God-forsaken souls and God-forsaken man? Is there someone there who cares?